very first class. This class here is your very first class because it's going to take you from stage one, literally from baby steps to thriving entrepreneurs. This is the main class. This first class is the most important class, I like to say, because if you understand the foundations we're establishing here, then you'll know exactly how to balance things along the line. Good evening, everyone, once again. So before we touch a single line of code, before we open a single design tool, we need to understand the invisible architecture that makes the internet function. You know, a premium designer does not just build pretty interfaces. A premium designer understands the engineering beneath the surface. If you do not understand infrastructure, you're not a web developer, you're not a designer, you're probably just a decorator. So today, the goal of this class is to ensure that you understand that. Then this particular class cannot be skipped. Unlike other classes, web design is a very, very broad thing. There are a lot of things that we may not be able to touch in the, within this program. But I assure you that in as much as it's a lifelong learning process, everything is a lifelong learning process. There are certain things that once you understand, you can operate, you can fully stand and operate an agency, a web design agency, okay, without any fear or any worry or anything at all. So now, let's start with the absolute fundamentals. What actually happens when you type a web address in your browser and hit enter? The first thing you must know is that there are two concepts, the clients and servers, okay? The internet operates on a deceptively simple model known as the client-to-server architecture. What is the client? The client is the device or software that is requesting for information. Your Google Chrome browser, your iPhone, your laptop, these are all clients. The client's job is to ask for data and then render that data into a visual format that a human being can interact with. That's so your Google browser is a client, your Chrome is a client, your Opera mini browser is a client. These are all clients. Now, what is the server? Because I said it operates a client-to-server architecture. A server is a high-performance specialized computer located in a data center somewhere in the world. Now, unlike your regular laptop or unlike your laptop at home, a server never sleeps. It is built to run 24/7, 365 days. All right. It possesses massive bandwidth, and its sole purpose is to serve files, HTML documents, CSS style sheets, JavaScript files, images, and databases to any client that requests them. So that's the primary goal of a server. So once you hit a web address in your browser, it is the responsibility of a server to present to you the content of that specific web address. So to make things simple, as though we're talking to a 5-year-old, it's like this. The client is your phone that is requesting for data. When you hit enter in your browser, you enter an address and you hit enter, you type an address and you hit enter. The server is the house where the content of that address lives. So it's the server's responsibility to present to you what exists in that house you're trying to access. Now, when a client wants to see a website, it sends a request across the global network. Now, when I say a client, I don't mean a customer. I mean a browser. Remember, I mean a browser. So when a client wants to see a website, it sends a request. Now, in this context, when your browser wants to see a website, it sends the request across the global network. The server receives that request, processes it, and sends back a response. Now, how do the client and the server talk to each other? They use a specific language or protocol known as HTTP, which stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. You can think of HTTP as the rules of shipping and receiving. It dictates exactly how messages must be formatted and transcribed across the internet. However, standard HTTP has a massive flaw. It transmits data in plain text. This means if you're logging into a website using standard HTTP, an attacker sitting on the same network can easily intercept and read your password. That's for HTTP, okay? Hypertext Transfer Protocol. Okay. Now, to solve this, we use something called HTTPS. The difference is the S. What does the S stand for? Secure, the word secure. So hypertext transfer protocol secure. The S is everything. HTTPS encrypts the data being sent between the client and the server using an advanced security protocol called TLS and SSL. TLS means transport layer security. SSL means security sockets layer. When a site uses HTTPS, the data is scrambled into an unreadable form before it leaves the client. It travels safely across the internet, and it is decrypted only when it safely reaches the destination server. Hold up a second. I need to be sure because I need to be sure you guys are following. I think someone, okay, the group is fine. I just needed to check in to know if anyone is asking a question there. So now it's very important that you understand this because these are the core concepts. A lot of people may have seen, you may have tried to visit a website and you see something like an attacker may be trying to steal your information. Some browsers would even, deny you access to that particular website, to some websites, right? Google Chrome would give you an option, you could click advanced and then you see an option to continue to that site regardless of the security warning. It simply means that that particular site is operating on HTTP and not HTTPS. Again, the difference between HTTP, because these are just protocols, HTTP is hypertext transfer protocol, and HTTPS is hypertext transfer protocol secure. So the difference is the S. And in as much as it sounds like, is it just an S? No, it's not just an S. That S is everything, every single thing. Now, how is it that some sites will try to render their content? Remember, I told you that these are like protocols and it's how data moves across the internet. So how is it that some websites would send you that warning, HTTP, because they are on the HTTP thingy, and other sites would not do that? The reason is because the site that does not give you that warning, or the site that Google does not warn you about, is protected with what we call a TLS or an SSL, a transport layer security or a secure socket layer. All right, they're like, sort of like the same thing. Now, let me repeat the last part I gave there. I said, when data is scrambled into an unreadable code before it leaves the client, it travels safely across the internet, and then it is decrypted only when it safely reaches the destination server. Now that happens only when a site uses HTTPS. So what compels a site to use HTTPS is when something called an SSL or a TLS has been installed on the website. Where do you install this? You install it right from your control panel in your hosting system, your hosting interface. Now let's proceed. As a developer, you must never launch a website that runs on a standard HTTP. By the way, I should quickly tell you, because every modern site requires an SSL certificate to enforce HTTPS. Remember we said SSL? I hope you still remember that, secure sockets layer. Now, that is what provides that shield that compels your site to operate on HTTPS and not HTTP, okay? Now, I should quickly tell you that these terms are going to sound like a lot. Someone out there is going to be like, what does this mean? These are like big words. Trust me, they're not big words. They're like easy things. You could once you know these things and once you interact with them, you could literally sleep off handling these things. It's like easy, like really easy. So you don't have to worry about anything. Now, if someone comes to you and says, all these protocols, what exactly do they do? Why is this important? Why do I have to make sure that my site is accessible via HTTP? Well, it's kind of simple. The simplest way to explain to them is if your site does not operate on HTTPS, it's not secure. That's all. Simply put, this is just security we're talking about. And now, why are we starting with this branch of security? We're starting with this branch of, mind you, security is the word I'm using, not cyber security. Cyber security is a deeper course on its own, and it's a much more advanced course. What we're talking about here is website security, the internet security. Cyber security has deeper protocols, deeper levels of operation, deeper systems that are much more integrated. It's like a different thing entirely. So in a way, in a definitive way, you could say, okay, this is a little branch of cybersecurity in that, you know, the whole thing we're talking about here is happening on the internet. But this is not same as cybersecurity as the course that you know it. No, that is a different thing entirely. What we're talking about here is just website security. And the reason we're starting with website security is because we're trying to explain to you the relationship between client and server, the client to server relationship, which simply means the browser to the hosting relationship. That's what it means. So now, another thing you should know real quick is the telephone directory of the internet, which is what we know to be the DNS, domain name server. Computers do not understand names like google.com or microfidelity.com. Computers only understand numbers. A lot of people don't know that, you know. People think simply because you see words on your computer, you know, in English, it means your computer understands these things in English. No, it doesn't. Your computer only understands numbers. Every single server connected to the internet is assigned a unique string of numbers known as an IP address, right? The word IP address in this context simply means Internet Protocol address. For example, something like 192.198.1.1 or 172.217.16 or, you know, stuff like that. Just that string of numbers is an IP address. Every server has this. It's a specific string, it's a unique string. Okay. You may have heard someone say, I tracked this person using their IP address. It's simple. It just means they were operating a particular device that was connected to a server, and that server had a specific unique string, which is the IP address, and the person was tracked. They didn't like trace the human because human beings in themselves do not have IP addresses. So they traced the server, which means if you maybe if someone should steal a phone right now, the way it works, the way tracking works is you would be tracking the IP address of that phone. And IP addresses are unique in that they just stay the same. Now, but if someone steals a phone right now and wants to access the internet and they use a VPN, what a VPN does is that it temporarily shuts down the original IP address of that particular device and renders a false a false IP address. So you can be in Nigeria and your IP address will be that of France, you know, that of a server in France. You could be in Nigeria and your IP is reading the US or the UK. So and also if certain websites block some IPs, because some websites block some, like a series or a string of IP addresses because they don't want people from some countries to access their sites. So that's where a VPS comes in. So a VPS would shield your original IP address and present you with a different one. Now, why is this important? This is important to you because a server is where websites actually live, and each server has an IP address. To break it down, once you go on google.com or you go on facebook.com, Facebook, all the content you see, the photos, the pictures, and all of those things, Facebook at its core exists on a server, and that server has an IP address. Human beings are terrible at remembering long strings of numbers, but we are great at remembering names. This is where the DNS comes in. Remember, I said something, I said the telephone directory of the internet, right? The DNS, domain name servers, right? Now, this is where DNS comes from. That DNS stands for, it's simple, domain name system. It literally tells, it's literally the telephone directory of the internet. Its entire job is to map human-readable domain names to computer-readable IP addresses. Now, let me explain what this means, because we're Nigerians here, so we're not computers. Let me explain what this means. Domain name systems or domain name servers have just one job, and the job is to map, well, this is going to be funny, is to map human-readable domain names to computer-readable IP addresses. Now, in plain English, like I'm speaking to a 5-year-old, it simply means, let's use someone, Rebecca. Rebecca is a girl who purchased the domain called Becky.com, right? She purchased the domain called Becky.com. Then she bought a hosting from a company like GoDaddy.com or microfidelity.com, right? Now, that server that came with her hosting account or her hosting subscription is somewhere in a data center in the UK or in the US. But her Becky.com, that is a domain name, that is just an address, exists on her account. So if someone goes to Becky.com by default, it's not going to go anywhere. Do you What is the connection, or what is the thing that connects Becky.com to the hosting account? That's where domain name system comes. That's where domain name systems come into play. So the operation or the job of a DNS, right? It's easier if you call it DNS, because like in all through your work after this class, you probably won't even remember it's called domain name system, but it's actually that. So we usually just call it DNS. So the job of a DNS is to map a specific name to a specific address, to a specific IP address. What that means is, I need a way to break this down. Let me break it down. Now, we have two things that power websites. We have the hosting and we have the domains. What is hosting? Hosting is every single thing you see on a website lives on something called a hosting. For example, you pick your phone and you take a photo of yourself and you upload it to the site. Where that picture goes to, you think it goes to google.com. For instance, if you upload it on google.com or Facebook, right now, let's use Facebook. People think their pictures live on Facebook in the sense of the name facebook.com. No, it doesn't live on facebook.com. I know you're saying it's in your your mobile uploads, on your cover photo folder or album, and you think, okay, this picture is on Facebook. Well, in a way you're right, but in a way you're wrong. It's not on Facebook per se. It's on a server. Okay, the name or the word or the term facebook.com is just an address. Think of it as like just an address. For example, in your house, someone would ask you right now, where do you live? You say house 9 or flat 9 National Judicial Institute, or let's say flat 9 National Judicial Institute, Mohammed Bello Center, Abuja. Now, if you say that, if someone says, if you're looking at National Judicial Institute and flat 9, is that your house? No, you're not sitting in it. Those are just a string of letters, alphabets. They're just words. They are not the house. But when you touch the wall of your house and you're looking at your house, right, you know that, okay, this is the house. That is the house in itself. All you presented as House 9 National Judicial Institute is just your address. So we can call House 9 National Judicial Institute, Airport Road, Abuja, your domain. That is the domain. But the actual building and the structure is called your hosting or your server. Now, let me make it even much more explanatory for you. I think this example would really help us, because this long thing I've been trying to explain is going to become really easy for you to understand right now. Think of two companies. Let's say in the government, we have two departments, right? Let's say we have two departments. One is called a hosting department, and the other is called a domain registry, right? Think of it like this. Now, what is the job of the hosting department? Think of the hosting department as the Ministry for Housing and Construction. I like to think we have that in Nigeria. Well, yeah, we do. Think of that as the Ministry for Housing and Construction. Yeah. So the hosting department of the government in Nigeria is your housing department, and their job is to allocate houses. They just give houses. If you want to rent an apartment, they give it to you. Now, each of these houses come with a specific ID. That ID is what we call IP address, IP addresses. So each house has an IP address, okay? Each house. So let's say you buy a house in, I need a very simple location, Maitama, for instance. You buy a house somewhere in Maitama, and let's say in that street where you got a house, there are multiple houses there. So each house is identified with a unique number, which is also known as a unique IP address. So maybe house number 1 has an IP address of 1.1.1. Like 1.1.1. Yeah, like that, because that's how IP addresses come, right? Then we have a different company or a different compartment of the government called a domain registry. Remember, now what is the responsibility of the domain registry? The domain registry is the company that gives those houses specific names. Now, why would the domain registry need to give those houses names? Remember, because the hosting registry or the hosting compartment, that other part of the government, is giving IDs in numbers. not in words. So the domain registry comes to give houses names in like alphabets. Do you understand? So it's kind of like simple. So company number one or department number one allocates actual houses with unique IDs, but those IDs are numbers, also known as IP address or IP addresses. Then compartment number two of the government is called the domain registry, and their assignment is simply giving those other houses specific names. They give them specific names, readable names that human beings can understand. Do you understand? Now, what connects these two agencies together? Because if you go to Ministry of Housing right now and you say, I want to buy a house, and they give you your house, all they give you is that house and your unique ID. That's all. So your IP address, that's what they give to you, right? Then you go to the domain registry and say, I want a name for a house. I want to buy, or a house I just bought. And it's okay, what name do you want? And you say, I want Becky.com, right? Becky.com. Okay, if you're given that house, what connects that name, that is just a string of letters or alphabets, what connects it to that house? Do you understand? Which means if somebody should say, yo, where do you live, Rebecca? And you say, I live at Becky.com. Why should Google Maps point Becky.com that you type to that exact place? Do you understand? To that exact structure and building. Now that's where a different company called DNS comes into play, domain name system. It is that company, it is their sole responsibility to connect the name to the IP address, so that anytime someone clicks on the name Becky.com, Becky.com will show them the content of the house that is on that IP address. If you understand that, I tell you the truth, you've understood like 50% of what it means to have a server and operate one. Now, here's the thing. Let's proceed. I'm going to ask us for questions in the next 15 minutes. Now, let me give you an exact step-by-step sequence of what happens when a user types like a domain name in their browser. First, the request can be something like, the user can type something like Becky.com and hit enter. There's something called, there's a recursive resolver. The browser will check its local cache. What is its local cache? It will check its local files, just wanting to know if it has ever gone to Becky.com before. When it doesn't find it, then it will ask the internet service provider, ISP, DNS resolver, the DNS now, remember that middle company. It's going to ask them, where is this Becky.com? So the root server, which is the root server now, which is like that hosting.com, where the hosting is, the house itself, right? If the ISP does not know, right, I don't know how to explain this to you. Okay, if the DNS does not know, the domain name resolver, which is like the domain name system, if it does not know, it's going to query global root servers. Now, I don't like that I'm using these terms because it's going to make it a little bit difficult for you to understand. But it's like this. You go to your browser, you hit Becky.com. Your browser is going to check its own system first to know if it has ever visited Becky.com. If it realizes that it has never visited Becky.com, it's going to go on in the internet and ask, check the DNS records, which is domain name system records. It's going to check that. Once it checks that, it's trying to look for what IP address is in this domain name system. Once it finds the IP address, it will direct you straight to that IP address. So if you look at the browser, sometimes you would notice that you hit some addresses and boom, it just goes straight. You see like your progress bar just runs with speed and the website loads. Other times, the same site can go slow and hold up, and sometimes we get to a point and it's just stuck and takes a while before it gives you the content of the site. It's because behind the scenes, the DNS system, the domain name system is trying to find exactly where that IP address is. That's all. That's all. Now, mind you, these big words, let me tell you something that I think should encourage you. If you do not understand anything I just said in the last 10 to 15 minutes, it does not and will not change the fact that after this program, you're going to be an incredible web designer. It does not affect that. It really doesn't, because this is the theoretical part of the class. What the design part of the program is practical. So if you don't understand this part, as a matter of fact, what I'm telling you here is something you could like ask an AI and real quick you get things sorted. Okay. All of this happens in milliseconds. Everything I explain here happens in milliseconds. If your DNS configuration is wrong, your website does not exist to the world, practically. So now let's proceed. Before I go on, let me see. Do we have questions? Does anyone have? If you have a question, please unmute and then just unmute and then let's see your question. Okay, someone said. I think someone said he's not hearing any sound. That was Adeniji. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. Adeniji, if you cannot hear, please let us know. And then Daniel said, would the recording be sent to the group? Yes, it will. It will be sent to the group or it will be uploaded on the platform. You don't have anything to worry about that. If anyone has a question, please unmute and then just go ahead with your question before we progress. Okay, simply put, I'll just assume no one has a question. So to just give like a cap or a summary to what I just said, I like you to think of it this way. The hosting is a house where your files, your website, your design, everything you're going to build that concerns the website, that's where it lives. It lives in the hosting. What's the hosting? The hosting is just a server. In other words, it's just a house that holds all of those things. But what kind of house is it? It's a server, which means it's a computer that is sitting somewhere in a place called a data center. Why is that place called a data center? In simple terms, a data center is a place where computers never go off. In your house, your laptop can sleep, your laptop can go off, your laptop can have an issue. In a data center, it's almost impossible. It is possible, by the way, but it is almost impossible for computers to go off because it is not a data center if the electricity is not 100%. All right, so you need they need steady internet and steady electricity to have data centers. Now, you may have noticed if you're someone here and you've bought a hosting from companies in Nigeria, now with respectfully so, yeah. If you bought a hosting from companies in Nigeria, or you bought a hosting from companies in Africa, and you bought one from the ones in the UK or in the US, you'll find out that sometimes the websites that are built on those companies that are in the UK and the US seems to be always they seem to be usually very fast and they never lag. Whereas some of the websites we have that are hosted on African platforms tend to be very slow. You may have tried to do a thing or two, or maybe on some of our national databases. I don't want to call names or say specific agencies, but there's specific agencies in the government in the country that their websites are slow as hell. It's because they are powered by mini data centers somewhere in Africa. And in Africa here, we don't have the electricity to truly power servers. So, I mean, you want to buy hosting, why buy from a provider that is hosted here in Africa? I'm not going to, okay, this is our class, so I think I can address something. We have a hosting company here in Nigeria. I'm going to try not to call names, but we have a hosting company here in Nigeria. They used to be the big dogs in the hosting industry. And I don't know, for some reason, they sold their company to another hosting company that is based in South Africa. Now, if you go on that hosting company, to give you a hint, their logo is blue, a bit of blue and white. They have an office. The office used to be in Gwarimpa, or so, Gwarimpa and Abuja here, if I'm not mistaken. If you go on their website, if you go on their Facebook page, you see a lot of comments. Down, my this is down, my that is down, this is not working, that is not working. The reason is simply because some of these hosting agencies are hosting their websites on African server. Someone is asking a question. He says, is it compulsory for website designer to have his own domain and hosting platform? That's a pretty interesting question. As a website developer, it's not compulsory per se. It is ideal for you to have your own domain name and your own hosting, but not the platform. It's not compulsory for you to have your domain and hosting platform. No, you don't have to have a full hosting company or a full domain name company. No. It's not at all. I wouldn't even advise that unless you can afford it. It's not easy to set up a hosting company. We're looking at millions or thousands of dollars. So it's not easy to have that set up. So it's not compulsory, yeah. But it's advised that you have your domain and your hosting. You know, that's where your own portfolio website is going to live. That's basically where your portfolio website is going to live. So if anyone has a question again, please throw it in before I progress. Okay, well, I guess we'll proceed. Now that you understand how data moves across the internet, let's talk about digital real estate. To put a website online, you need space on a server. This space is called web hosting. Not all hosting is created equal. Now, you should know that. Not all spaces are the same. Choosing the wrong type of hosting can cause a client's website to crash under minimal traffic. Minimal traffic, okay? And not only that, it could make the site become incredibly slow or become highly vulnerable to hackers. So let us dissect the core hosting environments you will encounter in the industry. First, we have something called shared hosting. Now, imagine a massive apartment building where hundreds of people live. Shared hosting is exactly like renting a single room in that building. You share the same front door, the same plumbing, the same water, the same electricity with hundreds of other tenants. On a shared hosting server, your website lives on a single machine alongside hundreds, sometimes thousands of other websites. You all share the exact same CPU, which is like processor, the exact same RAM, which is memory, and the exact same bandwidth. The advantage here is it is incredibly cheap and highly cost effective for brand new low traffic hobby sites, hobby websites, by the way. Incredibly cheap. Like you don't have like a big project. So it's kind of like your go-to. The disadvantage, on the other hand, is bad neighbors. Okay. If another website on your shared server experiences a massive traffic spike or gets infected with malware because of poor security, your website will slow down or crash as a direct result. You have zero control over the server settings. That's what shared hosting is. So you may have gone on a hosting company or a hosting platform and you say, I want shared hosting. And you say that it's kind of cheap, like really affordable. There are a lot of people advertising that right now in Africa. Yeah. So shared hosting is just a hosting where you have one room in a big apartment, hence the term shared. Okay. Now that's the first kind of hosting you'll see, shared hosting. The next you're going to see is VPS, virtual private server. Let me explain this in the simplest way. Imagine buying a high-end penthouse condo in a beautiful estate. Just imagine buying a penthouse, you know. You still share like the broader building structure, but you have your own dedicated utilities. You have your own private entrance. You have deep walls that isolate you from everyone else. And you have like your resources on your own, like a full apartment all to yourself. Okay, the bathroom is yours, the kitchen is yours, you know, the convenience, all of it is yours. That's what a VPS is. But remember, it's just one huge flat in like a big community. Okay, it could even be a big compound. Really, it could be a huge portion of land, but it's you still live with people. Just that it's not like shared hosting. Shared hosting is just one house among hundreds or thousands. Okay, now through a process called virtualization, a single physical server is split into isolated, independent virtual environments. Now, when you buy a VPS, you are allocated a strict guaranteed amount of CPU, RAM, and disk space that belongs exclusively to you. For the sake of VPS, this definition of a VPS, let me explain something to you about servers. When we say hosting servers and all of that, what is a server? A server is just a very, very intelligent computer that is designed to stay on the internet, to be active and alive for longer periods of time, and also to have like huge memory and huge storage space and huge bandwidth and high level processors. That's what a server is. It's like a very, very interesting computer. That's what it is. So websites, in the sense, you build, you hear someone say, oh, I built a site, and you're looking at it. Let me tell you something. Every site you're looking at are just contents that have been projected from a server somewhere called a data center. The data center could be in the US. Oh my God. This is a much more beautiful way to explain this to you, right? Think of it like this. A child sits in his house in the UK and designs something on Canva on his computer, right? Then you get to Sage from here. Now, that computer that he built that thing on is the server. It holds the content. Now, let's remove the child from this experience. Let's say you are the child, but in this case, you don't live in the UK. You live in Nigeria, but you have access to that computer that is right there in the UK. And from here, you're designing things on that computer. The point of this explanation is to tell you that the millions of websites you see are just files that live on specific computers across the globe. That's all it is. That's all it is. If a data center should be burned down today, by the way, that rarely happens, by the way. If a data center should burn down today, a lot of websites are going to be affected. Banks, companies, I mean, data centers are protected. If you think banks are protected, then you have no idea how protected data centers are. You know, they're protected from flood, erosion, all sorts of natural disasters. They're like golden stuff. I even think that Elon has like a mini data center on the moon or somewhere in space. I genuinely believe that if the guy parks his car in space, or or in a rocket in space, then I really do think he has like a data center on the moon or something, or in space. And I think I read something in the news a couple months back about Elon saying he wants to like set up a data center on the moon. Now, some people have their beliefs about Elon. Some are like, well, the guy is this and that and all of that. But from a tech standpoint, if Elon says he wants to have a data center on the moon, well, as a developer, you should be incredibly excited. Yes, it's going to be really expensive, but that's a huge opportunity because it changes a lot of things. If it's on the moon, first thing is there are no human beings to disturb it. That's the first thing. Second thing is whatever form of electricity they have there is going to be crazy. It's going to be massive, with absolutely no earthly disruptions or interruptions, you know, to be specific. So someone comes up like that, you know, sometimes when we, especially we Nigerians, when we recklessly accuse or attack some big entrepreneurs, it's because we're not in the space where we get to understand their motives and their goals. Picture an old woman just hearing that Elon wants to build a data center in the moon. She's not going to process the fact that she doesn't know what a data center is. She doesn't care. In that moment, she's like, all of these antichrist things that are coming, it's really the end of the world and yada, yada, yada. But as a tech person, because that is your field, you know that, no, it's not so. It's just a data center. And I think we really need that. If you can have one on the moon, great, awesome. Really good. So let's get back on course. I just used that to explain something to lighten the mood. So a VPS, a virtual private server right now, means you have a computer that is all yours somewhere in the UK, and it's all yours, right? Now, what is the difference between a VPS and what's it called now? A VPS and the shared hosting. What's the difference between a VPS hosting and a shared hosting? The difference is that a shared hosting is like a hosting. It's like there's one computer there in the UK, but multiple people use that single computer, or that particular computer. Multiple users are operating that computer remotely. That is what is called a shared hosting. But on a VPS, you're renting the entire machine. Okay, so now what's the advantage? Well, immense speed, alert security, total isolation. If another site on the server gets hacked or gets 1 million views, your site stays perfectly. Okay, in that room of computers, if anything happens to any computer, it does not affect you at all. And you have full root access, which means you can change things on that computer remotely all by yourself. And another thing, it means that there's two kinds of VPS. We have a blank VPS and the managed VPS. What is a blank VPS? If you buy a blank VPS hosting, it simply means you're renting a computer and the person that sells you that computer will never come back to check on it. His only assignment is to make sure that that computer stays on for as long as you are paying for it. So if you paid for a year, it is the responsibility of that hosting company to keep that computer in that particular data center on and active permanently for 1 whole year. Whereas in a managed VPS, the owner, the person you rented it from, or the hosting company is coming to make regular updates, It's coming to do security updates. It's coming to help you back up your files and all kinds of things, depending on their service policy. That's the difference. Managed VPSs are usually very expensive. Now, let me tell you something. If you did not take a class for web design and you attempted to build a website on your own, there is a huge possibility that you will spend 10 times more than you're meant to spend on building it yourself. There's a huge possibility. Now, you've heard things like .com, .org, .net, .ng. What are those things? Let's demystify that part. A domain is your unique identity on the web. Okay, it is broken into parts. The most important being the TLD, top level domain, often referred to as the domain extension. Now we have GTLDs, which are like generic top level domains. These are global extensions not tied to any specific country. For example, .com. The com there is for commerce or commercial. That is the undisputed king of credibility. Then we have .org. The org there is for organization or non-profits. We have .net. The net there is for network or technology. And then we have newer variants like .cloud, and .agency. Okay, so they're just like categories. Okay, they're called TLDs. They're like categories. Then we have CCTLDs, country code top level domains. These are strictly reserved for specific geographic regions or countries. For example, .ng represents Nigeria. .uk represents the United Kingdom. I almost said .za, but .za represents South Africa. Okay, using a CCTLD like .ng or .com.ng is highly powerful when building localized businesses because it signals immediate geographic relevance to local search engines, helping the site rank higher for regional searches. Now, the meaning of this English I just broke down, or all this mighty words that came out of my mouth, is if you buy .ng and your business is in Nigeria, or maybe your business could be anywhere, but if your business is like mybusiness.ng, it means that as far as search engines are concerned, people in Nigeria, once they type anything relating to your business would rank higher. So if you buy .ng, it just means people in Nigeria would stand a better chance of seeing your site on Google faster. But for the sake of this class, I'm going to whisper it to you. Do not ever buy a .ng unless you don't find a .com. Never attempt to buy a domain and start with a .ng. If you're running a law firm and you're like, okay, it's a law firm, I want a .ng. Okay, great, it's your choice. Law firms are exempted from that rule. It's not even a rule per se, it's a preference. Law firms are exempted. But naturally, if your goal is to rank on the internet, you should be looking for a .com. If I wanted to buy a domain like, let's say, this masterclass, I wanted to get thismasterclass.com, and it's not available, I'll instead of going for thismasterclass.ng, I would tweak the name to this very masterclass and try to see if I can get the .com. If I can't, it means another company has taken it. But I'll rather tweak names until I get the .com than settle for a .ng. You should only settle for a .ng when you have like a certified plan on how to market your site and how to to sell to that particular location. And also, you shouldn't carelessly buy .uk. Sometimes you buy .uk and you're in Nigeria and your business has nothing to do with the UK. Some agencies might flag down your domain or flag down your website. So it's just important you know that. But if you're in Nigeria, you don't have anything to worry about. In Nigeria, the agency that manages domain and all of those things is called NIRA, N-I-R-A. NIRA is the agency that handles all the domain names that we buy, all the .ng names that we buy. So now I've explained VP, I've explained server, I've explained domains, I've explained kinds of domains, I've explained domain name service and domain name system rather. Next thing here, let me explain to you is domain management, registrars, pointing. What are registrars? Who are domain registrars? Domain registrars are, just simply put, they are the companies that sell you domains. Okay, to own a domain, you pay an accredited organization called the domain registrar. Something like Namecheap GoDaddy, or Hostinger, you pay them to reserve that name for a specific period, usually a year. You can't buy a domain for months. You only buy domains for, in years. But hosting, you can buy the hosting companies that sell hosting for a month. The hosting companies that sell hosting for a year. Microfidelity, to be specific, has plans for months, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, like that. Okay, we have plans like that. Now, once you buy a domain at a registrar, or once you buy a domain at registrar A, and you buy a high-end hosting at a hosting provider B, like 2 different entities, right? 2 different companies, you must link them together. This linking is what we call pointing a domain. That's what we call pointing a domain. So if someone asks you, have you pointed the domain? It just means they're saying, have you connected that name to the hosting? Now, remember our example where we said there's a company that gives that gives you names, and you can just have like names for those houses. So the art of connecting that name to that IP address of that house is what we call pointing a domain. So you do this by changing what we call name servers. As it implies, name servers. Let me explain it. It means a name that is serving something, really, name servers. So you go to that compartment of the government, back to that our example, and say, I want to buy a name like Becky.com, and then they give you Becky.com. Then you go to the housing department and say, I want to rent a house, and they give you a house at Maitama with a specific IP address. Now, the responsibility of a name server, or what a name server is a specific or a unique tag that makes sure that Becky.com is pointing to that house in Maitama. That's all. So you will just have to go to your hosting account setting, go to the name server, and then enter whatever the name server of that house is. Let me explain something real quick. Now, where do name servers come from? Name server addresses usually would come from where you got your hosting. That's where it will come from. So that agency that gives you the IP addresses for the houses will have like a name server, like a link. It's like a clip. That clip is what you are to take to the the domain registry where you are buying the name, and give to them and say, yo, this is the teller these guys gave me. You should use it to connect people to that house I bought with them. So how do name servers appear? It's simple. Name server 1, name server 2. So name server 1 is going to be name server 1 dot the domain you're buying. Let me explain something here. Picture this: 2 companies. Microfidelity is your hosting provider. For example, Microfidelity is your hosting provider, right? Microfidelity.com is your hosting provider. They're the ones giving you the house, right? So now, when you buy a hosting from Microfidelity and they give you that house has a unique IP address. Remember the ID? A unique IP address. But at the same time, Microfidelity is going to give you name servers. What are our name servers? We have ns1.microfidelity.com and ns2.microfidelity.com. These are 2 tags. What is ns1? Name server 1.microfidelity.com and name server 2.microfidelity.com. So if you go to another company, that's if you do not buy the name from Microfidelity, if you go to another company like namecheap.com and you buy becky.com from them, right? All you have to give to that company, or all you have to enter in the domain section of your dashboard on your account in that company or on their website, is to enter ns1.microfidelity.com and ns2.microfidelity.com in the name server section of that domain you bought. Once you do this, it's going to take 30 seconds to 30 minutes, sometimes to 24 hours to propagate. What does propagate means? It means now that you have linked that name server, that tag, you've linked it to that domain, the internet is doing its thing to make sure that every time they type Becky.com will now get in a car called ns1.microfidelity.com and ns2.microfidelity.com. And that car only drives to one location. It goes straight to that house that you bought on microfidelity.com. So simply put, domain comes from one company, possibly hosting comes from another company. What connects them is a name server. Simple. The moment you update these name servers, a process called DNS propagation begins. Now, DNS propagation is the time it takes for the internet service providers and routers across the entire globe to update their geographic address books with your new server location. This process is not instant, I'll tell you the truth. It can take anywhere from a few minutes to 24 or 48 hours to fully replicate worldwide. This propagation window, in this specific time while you're waiting for this, your website might load perfectly on some phones and may not appear on some computers. All right, it's like a normal thing. So it just takes a while. Now, we've talked a lot. Before I take questions again, let me show you something. I'm currently sharing my screen. I want to show you something. Please tell me if you can see this empty Google tab that I'm on right now. Anyone who can see it should please unmute and tell me they can see this.
Yes, I can see it.
All right, great. Let's go to a website called What's My IP Address. I don't want to use that site. Let's go to a site called What's My DNS. I'm looking for DNS. Let's go to, let me search for it. Good. The first site here, what's my DNS.net. Now, what does this site do? Whenever you type in any name, any domain, it's going to tell you, if you type in it, it's going to tell you the records of that particular name. For example, if I say microfidelity.com, excuse me. Now, I want to find out what name server this microfidelity.com uses to connect to its own hosting. So I'm going to come here and switch to NS, which is name server, and click on search. You see, it brings up a result called ns1.microfidelity.cloud, ns2.microfidelity.cloud. Now, let's go back and switch to that A again, A records, because that's the one that will tell us the exact IP address. So now, ns1 and ns2.microfidelity.cloud drives to this address, 198.251.79.220. Don't worry, I can share this because it's not like a sensitive data. So someone out there might be like, oh, is he actually sharing this? What if it hacks my site? No, don't worry. There's nothing going on here. There's no hacking thing going on here. By the way, you can use tools like this to find out where your top brands in Nigeria or across the globe are, where they are pointed at or to. So let me quickly run through something. Now, there's something else I need to explain before we progress. There's something called WHM and cPanel. Yesterday, I think I mentioned something like that in the class yesterday. I'm not sure. Now, managing a raw Linux server or managing a server via text-based command line requires significant engineering skills. Now, remember I told you websites live on a server. Now, a server is not like a regular computer. I know I told you that everything you see on a website is just actually content that lives on a on a computer somewhere. Yes, but that computer is called a server for a reason. It's a server, which means it's not like a regular computer. So by default, if you access a server, it doesn't have like visuals by default. If you know command prompt or command line, anyone here that knows command line or terminal, depending on the OS you've used, but on your Windows computer, there's something called command prompt. If you've used command prompts before, you would know that you actually use commands to run things in command prompt. That's what you do. You use command to run things in command prompt. So if you're using command line to run things in command prompt, that interface is exactly the same interface a server uses to operate within itself. So a server is a computer that is not like your regular desktop, per se. It's not entirely like your regular desktop in that you need like some skill to, to operate it. Now, I did tell you that if you buy a server, I did tell you something about VPS, and I told you there are two kinds of VPS. I told you that one is called a blank VPS, and that's the one that when you buy it, it's a blank server, it's a blank computer. Now, once you have a blank computer, the first thing they install on it is an operating system. It could be Windows, it could be Linux, But in this case, because we're talking about website design, it would most likely be Linux. It will most likely be a Linux operating system. Now, if you're not familiar with what a Linux operating system is, let me put it this way. Linux is is basically an operating system that gives you much more power than Windows. If you see any, this is my opinion now, okay? No one should get offended. If you see a web developer or a web designer that loves Windows, well, well, in a way, that's kind of gay. It is kind of gay because Windows is such a limited operating system. Windows is an incredibly limited operating system. Among operating systems, Windows is like the beautiful girl on the street that doesn't know nothing, but she's incredibly beautiful and people love her, you know. Maybe they like how she speaks, they like how she walks, okay? But she doesn't know nothing. If you want to engage her in very intelligent conversations, she doesn't know what to tell you. Linux, on the other hand, is that incredibly scary looking girl that knows everything. So if there's a house on fire, she knows how to call fire service or she knows how to put it off. So that's like the discrepancy between the Linux operating system and the Windows operating system. So most people go for Windows, which is kind of like normal because normal laptops you're even going to buy in the market will come with Windows. But if you're going to get into web development, I'll advise you take a basic class or a basic course on on Linux, just to get acquainted with the interface. It's a really great thing because on a Linux, you do things that you had no idea your very own computer could do. Linux is so powerful that if you have a computer that you feel this computer is or this computer is like weak. This is an old computer. That computer that you've used so much, you feel like this is like a pointless. I should throw this thing away. Maybe it even lags or it gets hot or the fan blows or sometimes it shuts down. Tell you the truth, your computer may not be the problem. What might be killing your computer is the operating system on it. In which case, Windows is the OS that is known worldwide for crashing computers. No offense to Microsoft and Bill Gates or whoever it is or who it was that put together with the Windows operating system. Windows is known primarily, I'm sorry, but for killing computers. When it comes to that, you hardly can blame Linux. The only reason most people don't like Linux is because it's not all that beautiful. Now, then we have Mac OS. Mac OS is the operating system that is like Linux, but it's a beautiful Linux. And it's called Mac OS because Apple is just too proud to tell us that they borrowed their design and their systems and their concepts from Linux. Okay, so Mac OS is like the closest thing to Linux. It's just the closest thing to Linux. And then we have another operating system called Chrome OS. Chrome OS is an OS that is built on the Chromium browser. It's a brilliant one. Someone asked a question last night in our last class and said, what computer should I use? And I told her, I said, if you want to start off and you don't have like a huge budget, maybe anything between 40 to 100,000 or 40 to 80,000 naira, go for a Chromebook. I would always advise you go for a Chromebook. A Chromebook is built on Chrome OS by default. And a Chrome OS is so interesting. Among all these operating systems, it is the most beautiful operating system. Chrome OS is actually a balance that just has limitations. Now, no operating system really has it all. That's just the truth. Windows is a very beautiful operating system, but Windows is not smart enough to carry out some things. If you've ever turned on your computer and you see a notification saying Windows is updating itself, oh my God, that can be so frustrating and incredibly annoying. Sometimes Windows will just be using your data. Once your computer is connected to your router or your hotspot, it could just start downloading updates itself. And these updates are not like 10 MB. They could be 2 gigabytes, 3 gigabytes, 4 gigabytes. And that entire accumulation, you find out your data is gone. So if you're connected to your router 247 and you find out you're running out of data, it could be your Windows PC that is causing that. Someone out there is going to be wondering, why is he hitting this much? Hitting Windows this much? I'm hitting Windows this much because if you're going to go very far, especially if you intend to take the advanced class or you want to get like really deep, in fact, those who want to write code or those who want to go into software engineering and you use Windows, it's about time you start to forget everything about Windows and start preparing your mind for Linux. Linux is a computer that it has a UI, it has an interface, but you do very powerful things via command line. And people run away from it because they don't know command line. But thank God we've got AI right now. If you want to run a command, you could just ask AI what to run and all of that. Linux is incredibly powerful. But if you're not sure which to go for, I would say go for Chrome OS. Chrome OS is the most beautiful OS on the planet, as long as I am concerned. It's really beautiful, and it has an advantage. It gives you a Linux container, a Linux interface. The only thing is that Chrome OSs would usually come with Chromebooks, and Chromebooks. The only reason Chromebooks are not like a big deal in the world, or the only thing that kills their market, is the fact that Chromebooks do not come with very powerful processors, and they don't come with a lot of RAM, and they don't come with a lot of storage. 9 out of every 10 Chromebook would most likely be 4 gig RAM and 32 gig of storage, or 64 gig of storage. That's not so interesting. So what you do if you want to like enjoy your computer really well, is to dual boot. Maybe when we're done with the class, the program entirely, we're going to have a specific class to teach you, to teach everyone about operating systems. Because if you're going to do web development or web design, it matters what operating system you use. You don't want to use an operating system that just takes you by surprise. You're building a site, and simply because you forgot to hit save, you turn on your PC and everything you were building is just gone. No, you don't want to run into that. So it matters what operating system you use. So we're going to have a specific class where we guide you on what to use. It will most likely be between, I'd advise, but if you can afford it, by the way, if you can afford it, buy 3 computers. If you can afford it, let one be Windows, let the other be Chrome OS, and let the third be, what's it called now? Let the third be Linux. But if you have a Mac, or you have an Apple computer, maybe an iMac, or something with the M4 chip or something, any Apple computer really, then you're in a safer place, because with an Apple computer, you could just, via virtualization, install multiple operating systems within your MacBook or your MacBook Pro or MacBook Air. You could just do that instead of going to buy multiple computers. Or if you're very good, we could still have, in that class, we could still teach you how to dual boot or triple boot. This simply means having multiple operating systems in one computer. So let's skip that. But I explained that for a reason. When you buy a VPS, which is like a virtual private server, when you buy that, you have to install an operating system on it. Because it's web development, the server would most likely not be Windows. By default, they're going to give you Linux distros. What are Linux distros? Linux distros are just another name for Linux operating systems. Oh my God, I can't believe our time is gone. By 9, we're wrapping up the class. I'm really sorry. So Linux distros simply mean, the term distros just mean types of Linux operating system. That's all it means. So by default, we have, the way you have Windows 11, you have Windows 10, Windows, that's how we have Linux. But Linux does not come like Linux 10, Linux 8. No, Linux has distros like flavors. They call them flavors. So we have something like Zorin, we have Ubuntu, we have Alma, we have Kali, we have Arch Linux. People who use Arch Linux sometimes raise shoulders like they're the best thing that happened after ice cream, and it's not true. Okay, no offense to whoever uses that in this class. And then we have Zorin. Zorin is like the closest Linux distro that looks very similar to Windows, And then we have Linux Mint, so the different variants. But if for the sake of this class, if you're buying a web hosting, you would most likely be presented with options like Ubuntu, Alma Linux, or CentOS. These are variants of Linux, the Linux operating systems. So it's after installing that on the server that you can now go ahead and install what we call a web hosting manager and cPanel. Those 2 things I'm going to explain in our next class tomorrow. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to explain those 2 things in our next class tomorrow. And by the way, I did say we were going to have a morning and evening session. What I did was someone sent me a text today, and I read it, and I just realized that a number of us would be going to work. Like, there's a lot of people who work. And so I decided I'm just going to put the entire course curriculum together and serve it at night, which is exactly what we're doing. So for those who may think they missed the morning session, no, you didn't miss it. This is like the whole compendium, the entire suite. So someone is asking a question. He said, by the way, it's time for questions. You can ask any question you have. Someone is saying, does the hosting require subscription when you have it? Well, yes, in order for you to get a hosting, you have to pay for it. You do need to pay for it. Although the hosting you're going to be using in the course of this program has already been paid for by Microfidelity itself. It's totally free. I did say that every single thing we'll be doing here is going to be provided for free, every single thing. So, but if you want to get yours, yeah, it also, you need something like that. And to give you an idea of how much hosting would cost, it depends on the type of hosting. If you're new, it's advised you get shared hosting. Shared hosting in Nigeria right now, African companies sell it for maybe around 20 to 50,000 naira. Around 20 to 50,000 naira. You get shared hosting between 20 to 50,000. It depends on the type of shared hosting, because they have like different plans and different subscriptions. So yeah, that just gives you an idea. But we're working on a program here because we want to see how we can present in the advanced, those who will be taking part in the advanced class who would require hosting and domain. We're trying to see how we could slash down the cost for them, because it's a class. To me, I feel it'll be a little bit, maybe, I don't know, maybe a little bit unfair. It's not unfair, but I just feel somehow if a student has to pay like 50,000 naira just to get hosting simply because they want to take an advanced class. So we're working on something. Those who are going to be part of the advanced class are going to get like a huge discount if they're getting their hosting from Microfidelity. So maybe something about 10 to 15,000 naira or 20,000, depending on what myself and the team can afford. We're going to append discounts like that. But yes, in the long run, you're going to need a hosting account. You're going to need hosting, and you're going to need domain. So please, if you have a question, please send it in the chat box. So before we're wrapping up now, while the questions are coming in, let me quickly give you an idea of what this course you're taking can afford you. First, how much do you, I think guys, let's unmute our mics. I want to throw a question around. By the way, if you have a question, send it in the group. Let's send it in the text. Let's unmute our mics. I want us to talk. Let's say you build a site just randomly, yeah? Someone contacts you and say, I want you to build a website for me. How much do you think you will charge for a 5-page website? I want to know where our minds are at. Someone contacts you in Nigeria and says, I want you to build a website for me, 5 pages. Or let me even simplify it. The lady says she sells perfumes. She wants a website where people can order perfumes and transact. How much would you charge for it? If you want to say something, please go ahead. Okay. Okay, did you say 40K or 50K?
Yeah, 50K per page, because I think I've seen something like that on Fiverr for where they charge $25, $30 per page. Because there they have basic package, they have the premium package, they have the silver package. So some they might just say maybe
Okay.
it might be just the outline, might be the basic package. So some do charge $50 per page. Some charge 100 for the
That's true.
for those who are the advanced level, charge them $100 per page on Fiverr.
Yeah.
So it depends. But at least maybe for Nigeria, so I can say maybe
That's right.
50,000 per page.
Okay, that's great. So Bamidele says he's probably going to charge between 40 to 50,000 naira per page for a website that sells perfumes. Let me hear from someone else. I think Jerome was about to say something. I think Jerome and Princess. Jerome, were you about to say something? Okay, Jerome is muted. Princess, are you there? Were you going to say something?
Yes, I always drop the message on the group. I asked if the hosting will cover both the
Oh, okay. I've seen it. Okay, I've seen it. Don't worry, I'll attend to those questions. Don't worry, I can see them. I've seen it. Princess, were you going to say something about the question? How much? The question
Yes,
is,
sir.
how much would you charge if someone says, I want to build a perfume website? How much would you charge? Okay, go on.
All right. I think our charge would be 200,000 naira, but it depends on the type of hosting. If it's ng.com, I think it's
Okay.
going to be different.
Okay.
Yes, so
Okay. Now
I'll
let me
charge based
rephrase
on
the
it.
question. Thank you, dear. Let me rephrase the question. Now, there's two brands that are contacting you. They both of them sell perfumes. One of them is a startup entrepreneur who is like, trying to get on her feet. It's a new brand, it's a new idea, it's a new concept. She's getting into the market and she wants a website to, tell the world that she's ready to fly. How much would you charge that person? The other person is the other person is an existing brand. They've already been in business. In fact, let's even make it three. The other person, they've already been in business. Her brand, I'm not going to tell you what it's worth, but like they're big guys, not the biggest, but like they're wealthy and they're okay. I'm not going to use the word wealthy. It's a big brand. How much are you going to charge them? That's the middle class brand. And then the third is like a really, really well-to-do brand, a popular brand, a globally recognized brand, and they contact you to say, build us something for our business. How would you price these things? Mind you, these conversations are happening in Naira, not in dollars, in Naira.
Since you said, can you hear me? Hello.
Yeah, sure, sure.
Yeah, since you said
Oh, Jerome, we stopped hearing you.
one is it's just
Can
I might just consider charging. Can you hear me?
Okay, we can hear you now. Please go ahead.
Please, yeah, I
Go ahead.
said since with the first one is entrepreneur, it's just starting. I can just charge him maybe for the
Yes.
5 page website for like 50,000 naira. But for the middle class that they already maybe they are rich but they are middle class, I will charge them higher
Yeah.
based on their credential, based on what they have been doing and what they want to do with the website. So I have to charge them higher. And for the higher class,
Okay.
I'll decide to charge them more higher again.
Okay.
That is it.
Okay. That's great. That's great. Anyone
So,
else? Okay. Bamidele, you saying something?
from what the lady from what she said, because I think for the one who's just starting, I kind of think maybe it might be a static page. So can you hear me?
Okay.
So
Yeah,
I
sure, sure,
think
sure. Why not?
from one perspective, I think the this might not be that high compared to that of the middle class, where the consumption, like the demand, will be high, and
Okay.
considering the what do you call it, the hosting and
Yeah.
the speed. So I think that will cost more. So
Okay.
and you know when the demand is high, so at some point you need to maybe kind of update the portal, the speed and all of that, and
Yeah.
so all those will be put into consideration though. So I think I'll charge higher for that because of the what do you call it, because of the hosting, because of
Yeah.
the hosting, yeah, even the maintenance even itself. So yeah, I think I will charge higher for
Yeah.
that. Then for the other ones, I think that can be a static kind of static page where the this one might be simple. So I think
Yeah.
let me advance a bit. Let me step up a bit. Let me take it from maybe 100,000 per page. So I think let me just put that. I
Okay.
think that will be fine. So let me put it on a let me not make it amateur. So let me just make it a bit true. Are you getting me? So then for the other
Yeah.
one, so I think the hosting will be, the demand will be high, the traffic will be high,
Okay.
and even the maintenance there. So I think I would charge
Yeah.
more for that of the one on the middle class, because the competition and
Okay.
the traffic will be high. So I think I'll charge more for that. But for the static page, I think I can charge 100K for that. 100K, 90K, I think that's fair. That's, to me, from one
Okay.
perspective, I think
Awesome.
that's it.
Okay. Awesome. 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 Does anyone else have another opinion? Is there anyone else? Princess, how would you charge this? How will you charge these three brands?
All right, so it will depend on the workload. to
Okay.
design the
Okay.
website. So I'm not just going to charge them. I'll first of all look at it. What do they want? Even the brand that is
Okay.
just coming up, though it's a small brand, I don't even know how much you're making. But what's the workload on me? So that's what I'm going to
Yeah.
look at to charge each of them. Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. Awesome. I was actually going to say no one has said anything about the workload. This is why I like Nigerians, and on another hand, this is why it's that maybe a little bit tough for we Nigerians. Nigerians are very empathetic by default. Nigerians are considerate to a fault because hearing everyone speak, the first thing they considered is how much would they get the hosting, how much would they get the domain. They didn't even look out for themselves. Nigerians are selfless to a fault. Personally, I started that way. But right now, someone contacts me. I don't even care how much the hosting is, quite honestly. I won't even look at that. I'm just going to tell you exactly what I think I am worth right now. I'm going to tell you exactly what I think I'm worth. Do you know that I was in web design for like 2 years, and I didn't realize that it was going to be like a thing. It was not a big deal. I was doing it because I loved it. I was really in love with web design. I have been in love with web design. I really like web design. Prior to that, I was into fashion, and I love fashion. I like to think I like fashion too much. I never thought that I would ditch a sewing machine to for web design. I love fashion so much that I would sew for people for free. I liked it that much. Now, until it got to a point where I'm like, well, fashion cannot pay for the kind of things I want. One day I sat down and I asked myself a question. Someone paid, I said, let's assume by any chance in Nigeria, someone pays me 200,000 naira for to make an up and down or something. That's what we call it in Nigeria, a trouser and a shirt. And I was asking myself, how long is it going to take me to make that? And I realized, well, let's say a day or two, maximum, let's say 2 days to make a top and a trouser. And I found out that, well, 2 whole days to bring this out. The problem is not showing it. The problem is what customer in this landscape is going to pay you 200,000 naira for just a top and a shirt, for just a trouser and a shirt. What customer is going to do that? So the competition is incredible. It's crazy. It's sick. And I said, nope, this is not going to be it. All the while, I was still in web development, and it wasn't a big deal until I made something for a client one time, a client abroad, and he loved it so much, and he paid much more than I wanted. And I didn't know why he kept on coming back for more projects until one day he sent me a link to a site and said, take a look at it. How much would you build it? And I gave him my price. And he told me, what do you think this website is worth? Right? No, he said, what is this website worth? And I told him it's worth X and X amount. And he said, the developer charged 3 times the amount you just called. And I'm like, what the hell? For this tiny thing that I'm looking at. And, from there, I said, I'm going to build a business around this. And then I left, I put everything on hold and started to learn the business side. Now, why am I telling you this? By default, if you're coming into this industry newly, you would be empathetic. You would take a very simple approach to it. First things first, if you're a web designer, never have anything that is priced less than 200,000 naira by default. Never have that. It doesn't mean you shouldn't work for less than 200,000 naira. No, you should. You can work for less than 200,000 naira. You could build something for 50,000 naira. Yeah. But on that page, that is your portfolio page where you have like your pricing listed, the list should be 200,000 naira. As long as it's in naira, the list should be 200,000 naira. And then if you're dealing with clients that are abroad, the list could be, I don't know, maybe $150. It should be like that. The reason is people are drawn to value. People are drawn to, you could build an ugly website and people will pay you so much. I know some guys in this country, in Lagos, they built one of the websites for, I think, one of the biggest real estate firms in Lagos. I'm not going to call their names, but their brand color is green. A really big real estate company. They're hosting their developers and about 2M, 2 to 3M monthly. That website, yeah. No offense, but if you sit down pooing in a restroom, you'll build something better. I tell you the truth, you really build something better. But they paid 2 point something M, you know. So it comes down to connection, it comes down to the pricing, and it comes down to how you see business. So please, whenever someone presents something to you like that, the first thing you should look at is how much are you worth? That time you're going to dedicate to that, how much is it worth? Because as long as the skill is concerned, you have the skill. Do you understand? Web hosting, web development is a finite thing. It's not something that you look at and you're like, let me check if I can build this. No, 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 no. As long as it's a WordPress project, it is always possible, which is why we're showing those who were around yesterday, we showed them something called Elementor. With Elementor, so much is possible. So there's no, no, this is out of my field. No, 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 no. They're just specific things that you may not be able to build on WordPress, in which case you need higher development tools. And by the way, never turn down jobs. Someone contacts you and say, yo, I want to build an app. Boom, you have an A idea, start to make research on the project, and then start contacting people who do that. And then you make the referrals, you take your cut. You never turn down projects. The reason I'm saying that is because the average consumer or the average customer or client does not know the difference between a web developer, an app developer, or a software developer. They assume you do everything. And so if they think you do everything, that's really good for your branding and for the perception of your branding. So you never turn down projects. So it's great to have a network of people who, I have friends who are app developers, friends who are on standby, they do incredible things, all kinds of things. My field is strictly web development and some of the corporate, some things in the corporate spaces. But I have friends that are like full on into things that I look at them, I'm like, man, you don't even have a life, really. Like software developers, for instance, they practically don't even have a life. And yet, you know, we converge. And when I get jobs, I say, yo, how much are you going to do this for? So the opportunities are vast. Tell you the truth, it is vast. And before we wrap up this class, I should tell you, most of the people who do ads on Instagram who come up and say, so I can add now, just says, so this is how I made 1 million naira in the last 4 days. When I see ads like that, I feel very sorry for those in the comment section, because it's very easy to believe that. The person doesn't tell you the billion things they tried before they made that money in the last 4 days. Is it to say that it's not possible? No, 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 no. But selling it as a clickbait strategy to tell you that to make you think you could just do it and end that in the next 4 days, it's not true. It's not true. It's not true. You would have, that's why, which is why they would usually say, okay, join this masterclass. And after that, they tell you there's another advanced program. And then the circle just goes on and on and on and on. The goal of this training is to make sure that you know what's possible for you. One of the things that I know would be 100% possible for you is after this program, you should have a running web design agency. I see no reason why anyone would, you know, graduate this program and not have a web design company. I don't see the reason. Well, because as a matter of fact, we're trying to see how those who are going to take the advanced classes would have like hosting for a year. So the hosting they're going to pay for, or you know, to take that class shouldn't be just valid for that class. It should be valid for the entire year. It should be their hosting, and they should have their website built on it. They should have their portfolio, their business, and all of that. And if they need you know, they should get it registered, CAC, company house in the UK, or you know, LLC in the US. It should do all the things you need to do to have your business running. It's best to have a business and then you're waiting for clients, to be working on your business while waiting for clients, than to just sit there thinking of a business. It's best to execute and proceed. So let me respond to the questions we have in the group. Someone said the hosting. Okay, Jerome said the hosting, does it cover both hosting and domain? Which one are you asking about? Are you asking about the one for the advanced class or the one we're going to be using in this program? Which one are you asking about? While Jerome responds to that, another person says, can you guide us on how to install? Yes. Okay, for the advanced class. Yes, yes. Whatever we're setting up for the advanced class will cover both hosting, it'll cover domain, it'll cover email, it'll cover security, and most likely backup. Yes, it will. It will. The one for this training, nobody's paying, you're not paying for it. The domain and hosting is also covered. Another person says, can you guide us on how to install Linux now? Let's do that in preparation for the full class. Okay, we could do that. It's pretty easy, but I think we'll have to have a specific class for that. This program would not, Okay, go on. Someone wants to say something. Go on.
Sorry, I want to so I think most of us wants to install Linux, but I think I've seen something like that before, but it's not that easy to use. So what I
Yeah,
would prefer is
that's
the
true.
I want you to um I want you to maybe the there was one you made mention of that you said we can install three operating software. So I'll prefer that. So
Yes, yes, you
I
triple
want you to
boot.
recommend that. So at least if you
Okay,
can't
okay,
even adapt to that of the what do you call it, the lineup, you can use that of the macOS.
okay, that's fine. That's fine. I think this is what we'll do in one of our classes. I think we'll take 15 minutes to just show how to triple boot.
Yeah, yeah,
I'll do
so
that.
exactly. So that's one I
Yeah,
prefer.
yeah, I'll do that. That's great. Then Zamani says, please explain something about the okay. Something Bamde is talking about because I don't get it. Okay, Zamani, what was that? Is Zamani still on? Is Zamani still on? Zamani sent a question that I don't understand. Um, Anyway, our time is fast spent. Zamani, please pardon me. I will take your question in the next class. I'm copying it now. I'm gonna paste it somewhere so that I'll take it in the next class. Our time is fast spent. Thank you very much for being committed to this. Um, if I know we're gonna have more questions, while you think on these things that we've shared and that we've gone over today, you can pen down your questions. Okay, my own goal is I just want everyone to have that confidence factor. I don't know why. It's a little bit personal for me. It's a little bit personal for me. Running a business has been the best decision of my life. Although it comes with pros and cons. Yeah. So I personally, I don't think I have a social life. Yet I do think I'm an incredibly social person. I sound like this, and a lot of people think, oh, he sounds like this. He must be a fun person. Well, my definition of fun means I'm in the room, I'm working on my computer. When I go out, I just go out, I do things all by myself because my time clashes with that of people. When someone wants to be out there clubbing, I'm not available. Okay, then when I feel like clubbing, the clubs are shut down. It's crazy. But running the business it has been the best decision. Yeah, it has been the best decision. And to be specific, running a web hosting company has been the best thing for me. Okay. Um, to tell you how good it is, when I'm in the US, I don't bother myself about anything. When I'm in the UK, I don't bother myself about anything because the business is fully online. I could go to France, I could go to Turkey. Everything about my business is just on my computer. That's all. The only way to, and it's once you've built it, it's online, and we've got teams that are attending to people and doing all the things that need to be done. And beautiful part, which is an icing on the cake, web development that you're about to learn is not same as selling tomatoes, because selling tomatoes, you need people to come and be buying tomatoes every day. No, if a client pays you for hosting this year, he remains your client because next year they have to renew that. If they don't renew it, the website goes down. So in a way, it's some sort of permanent recurring revenue. So if you have and you don't need a lot of clients, you probably would need in my life, I think when I had the major breakthrough, when I had a stable income flow, I was just shuffling or juggling between four clients, and that was enough for me because that was enough, really. It depends on what the clients are paying you. Let's say you have clients that are paying just 100,000 naira, and then you have maybe 20 of those. That's roughly 2 million naira. And I said, they pay you this year, next year they're paying you again. But the better part is that next year that they're paying you again, you're not building the website all over. You just have to maintain it, update plugins, update themes and all. So it's pretty much a good thing, if you ask me. I think it's a really great thing, if you ask me. But the most important thing is you have to be really good at it. Really, really good at it. And you're in luck. Why? Because most people are incredibly bad at it. That's why you're in luck. So I think I'll see. Someone said, is WordPress responsive? Can it be used to build websites for mobile tab? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, WordPress is responsive. So thank you very much. I'll see us in the next class. Please, if we have questions, you could just post them in the group, and then I'll address it. If you could send it to me directly, and it may take a while before I open it, but in the group, I'll see it. If I don't see it, Vanessa will call my attention to it and I'll see it. So thank you so much, guys. Good night. Have a wonderful night rest.